Primaries are wrapping up in several states across the country, and this does not look like this one as well for Trump-backed candidates as many other races have in the past. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that, and my thoughts about the candidates that did and did not win. Joe Biden gives a moving speech, and by moving I don't mean the movement in his pants, but he gives a speech telling us just how we're supposed to sit and think and feel about what happened in Buffalo over this, and also points out the fact that the Buffalo shooter did January 6th. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that, and we'll actually listen to, I've got a couple selections from the speech I want to share with you guys. Not a lot of clips that have been circulated, but I do have a couple of clips off the C-SPAN broadcast that we'll go talk about. In other news, the Sussman trial has opened, and lawyers are coming off and telling us that, hey, yeah, the Clintons did use the FBI to go back and spy on Trump, so we'll talk just a bit about what's going on there. And with that, and a new report comes out from Twitter that shows that nearly half of Biden's Twitter followers are fake. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Ed Heads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got a pretty full slate of news. I'm pretty sure we're not going to get through everything today just because of the fact that we did have to, and I'm starting late because I was going through, I listened to the whole Biden speech, and there were a couple highlights. I think there were three that I want to make sure to get to on this speech that, just to tell you where the mindset is and where it is that they're trying to point this, and the kind of agenda that they're trying to push off onto this as well. I thought that was important enough to take a look at, so we'll go ahead and look at that. We'll look at some of the articles that came out about that first before that, but yeah, we've got a lot to go over with that and everything else today. We are streaming to Instagram again today, so if you see me reach forward to go hit a wave button, it's because somebody popped on over the Instagram side. Unfortunately, it is really early on in the day, and it's not always easy to go and get that level of viewers coming off of there, but, I see you guys out there telling a friend, telling 10 friends, getting some more people in here. The goal is to see if we can't get 20 people at the end of each week. At least one instance where there are 20 people chatting at the same time, and I don't read the chat on air, but I do look over and see about how many people are watching. I've got a counter cross-platform on the bottom of my chat window, so definitely go and check that out. So definitely, come on, tell a friend, tell a few friends, get some more people in here, get some more people hanging out, some more discussion. Even though I don't read it on the air, I do read every single chat that you guys put through. Every single day. I know what you guys are saying, even if I have to go back and watch the YouTube broadcast again. I know exactly what you guys are saying and what you guys want to see more of, so definitely go and check that out. And before we get started, make sure you check out the great shows that are on the Turns and Pages Network. Looks like I will be joining Brian Nichols here. I got to get the date ironed out with him to promote the Turns and Pages Network and the people that are going to be on that, our mission. But do make sure before we get started and get the fundraiser out there that you go check out great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, who will be off today, by the way. The Porch Boys, who, according to last night's episode, can't meme. The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the Already Conservative. And remember, also check out our friend, Britt Salt, and the new show that'll be coming up once we get started here. So go check out all those programs. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. And let's get into the news, starting with the finance, as we always do in the morning. Looking at the Dow, which had its another update, bring itself back up to 32,654, a far cry from the 36,952.65, but recovering slightly from the 31,228.20. Now it does look like the futures are back down right now, dropped another 150 points off there. So if the patterns that we've been seeing for the past few weeks have been, will hold steady through what we'll see probably back around the 31,000 mark by the end of the day, but That will be for open trading. We won't know that until the actual trading comes in and starts, so we will continue to watch that and see where that goes. Looking at your Bitcoin. Bitcoin has dropped now to 29,774. That is up $541 over the past 5 days. Over today, it's down 638 US dollars and 10 US cents, but it's still holding steady right around that 30,000 line. It gets up somewhere to 31,000, it gets down to 29,000, but it's fairly consistent in where it's going. It's at its lowest point in the last 5 days was down to 28,762.50, but even still, looking at what we see and where Bitcoin goes, that's a very consistent number. Considering we've gone everywhere from $15 a coin all the way up to 60,000 a coin. So even though there's some volatility with it, it's still holding fairly steady. We'll see what happens with that and where that goes. All right, and looking at your gas prices around the Madison area, well, all I have to say is that is not some good news. The Costco at Sun Prairie, typically your low price leader around the area, is at $4.07. The Race in Sun Prairie, the Cenex as well, all at $4.07. The Mobile and Portage is at $4.08. And as we get down into Middleton and Madison proper, we see 409s. Back up in Portage, we're at $4.11. The BP in the Capital Metro mark, both in Madison proper, are at $4.13. So I do hope that, as I mentioned before, you guys all went out and filled up, because it's only going to get worse as we go. So that's what we see coming off of that. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. From Investors Business Daily, Dow futures fall after stock market surge. Target plunges 23% on earnings. Now, there have been recent issues with Target. Do keep in mind that this new chest binders and packing underwear thing that we saw just last week, those are not going to be included in this because this is for the quarter prior to that, so January to March. They're probably going to be in for a whole new set of problems coming in after that. But, I mean, the writing's been on the wall. The wokeism's been on the wall. They haven't been, up until this coming June, or the announcement for this coming June, they haven't been as overt about it. But it's there. We know that they're there. They're trying to push more black-owned businesses. They're trying to put more of that stuff on the shelf to a certain percentage point. But, like, they say the announcement, then they never talk about it again. Whereas many other people, like Walmart, plaster it all over their goddamn walls. So, something to watch with Target, and they're on the precipice of going woke. They might be able to pull themselves back out of it, but, I mean, the only reason I'm spending a gift card there at this point is because they've already got the money. So, we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. But let's see what it is that they have to say. Doximity, KTZed, reported earnings late Tuesday. Analog Devices and Lowe's, as well as Target and TJX, were among the companies that reported Wednesday morning. Doximity tumbled 13%, KTZed inched lower, Analog rallied around 2%, Lowe's stumbled more than 2%, and TJX jumped more than 2%. Tesla traded down nearly 2% Wednesday morning. Elsewhere, Dow Jones tech leaders Apple and Microsoft fell 1.1% and 0.8% respectively in today's stock market. Amid a new stock market rally, Dow leaders Chevron and Merck, along with Broadcom, Eli Lilly, and ExxonMobil, are among IBD's top stocks to watch for Wednesday. So, oil and healthcare in the middle of them trying to scare the shit out of you that, hey, there's another coronavirus wave coming. Merck and Microsoft are IBD leaderboard stocks. Eli Lilly and Merck were featured in this week's Stocks Nearby Zone column. On the Dow today, before Wednesday's open, Dow futures moved down 0.6% versus fair value, as Walmart and Home Depot both swung more than 2% lower. S&P fell 0.75%, NASDAQ lost 1% in morning trade, along with Analog Devices trading at the top of the index, while Dollar Tree and Costco fell about 5% apiece. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. On your ETFs, among exchange-traded funds, the NASDAQ 100 tracker, Invesco QQQ Trust, fell 1.2%. The SPDR S&P 500 ETF dropped 0.9%. The 10-year yield rose back again to 3% on Wednesday after ending Tuesday at 2.96. The 10-year yield remains off last week's 52-week high of 3.16. Meanwhile, U.S. oil prices rose nearly 2%, with West Texas Intermediate crude trading above $114 a barrel. The price of WTI is at its highest point since late March. So, a lot of stuff to watch, a lot of stuff to see with that, and yeah, I mean, it is interesting to watch and see where this goes and see what actually happens with this as more and more big retail companies, in spite of the fact that we keep getting reports that retail is at its highest point ever, more and more retail companies are posting losses, 2%, 3%, 5%, and the investors see that, and some of them are trying to get their money out of it. So we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. Let's grab one briefly from investing.com and get into the big news of the day. Actually, we're not going to get in one from investing.com because we've noticed you're using an ad blocker, and dumbass me didn't archive it. So, with that, let's get into the big news of the day, and we're going to start with the midterms and what's happening there. We're actually going to start with one that I wanted to touch on yesterday before we got out of here, because especially with our resident New Yorker in here, proposed New York maps create House battleground from Reed Wilson. A special master tasked with redrawing the New York congressional district lines released a proposed draft on Monday that would make the Empire State an epicenter for the national fight to control the U.S. House of Representatives. The proposal, offered by Carnegie Mellon political scientist Jonathan Servas, would create 15 districts that favor Democrat candidates and 5 that favor Republicans, according to data posted on the nonpartisan Dave's Redistricting app. The remaining 6 on suburban Long Island, on Staten Island, and north of the Hudson Valley would likely be competitive between both parties. Servas said in a filing made with the court overseeing the redistricting process. The new maps come after an initial version approved by the state legislature was struck down by Steuben County Supreme Court Judge Patrick McAllister. These maps would have given Democrats an advantage of 22 of the 26 districts that New York will have for the next decade to come. Instead, Servas has proposed a map that could give Republicans an opportunity to win up to 11 seats in Congress. The right political atmosphere, Republicans have not held that many seats in New York since the 2002 elections. Servas's proposed map gives Representative Nicole Malliotakis a much better chance of keeping her Staten Island-based district. Under Democratic lines, Malliotakis' district would have added thousands of new Democratic voters who would stay in districts held by Gerald Nadler and Yvette Clarke under Servas's proposal. The map set up an explosive clash between 2 longtime Democrats who now find themselves drawn into the same district. In statements after the maps were released, Nadler and Carolyn Maloney both said they would run for the same district. And I believe, if I remember correctly, and we might have to ask our resident New Yorker, I might actually set up an across the board with midterms with that as a topic as New York and see if our resident New Yorker will come in and have a conversation with us, because it looks like this affects him. But I believe Nadler and Maloney are in the city proper. I don't think they're outside in the suburbs, if I remember correctly. Nadler, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, and Maloney, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, both won election to Congress in 1992. Well, if they've both been in there since 1992, it's 2022. That's 30 years. Heave ho! Time for them both to be gone. Districts held by Tom Suozzi, who is running for governor, and Andrew Garbarino, both on Long Island, would become much more competitive than they have been in recent years. Sean Patrick Maloney is drawn into a district currently held by Rep. Mondaire Jones. Maloney, who heads the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, said that he would run in the district that most closely resembles Jones's. Jones, first elected in 2020, not 2022, that's coming up here, did not immediately say which seat that he would seek. Wouldn't that be nice if they knocked off one of the squad? And I don't want to see Maloney get another district off of this, but to knock off one of those irritating pricks from the squad. Bye-bye! A seat held by Antonio Delgado, who is soon to leave Congress to become New York's lieutenant governor, would also be competitive, though it would favor Democrats by marginally more than Delgado's current district. Delgado ousted then Rep. John Fasco in the 2018 midterm elections by 15,000 votes. One current Republican-held seat will remain perennial Democrat target. The seat held by John Katko, near Syracuse, appears to favor Democrats by a slim margin. The new map includes 10 districts with a majority-minority population, all in New York City area. Only one of those districts, Malliotakis' seat, is currently held by a Republican. The remaining 9 are heavily Democrat. Inner city? Minority held? Heavily Democrat? I'm shocked. I'm not saying anything about the races or anything. I'm just saying what statistics have shown us year over year over year. And part of the reason they're drawing these seats the way that they are, especially not taking a step outside of New York, how they tried to draw them in Florida. The Democrats still think that they have these votes on a plantation. Services proposal is not final yet. New Yorkers have until Wednesday to offer comment on its draft. The special master faces a Friday deadline to turn in his work. New York's congressional primaries are scheduled for August 23rd. I'm a little bit surprised, by the way, that this number is, well, I'm sure that there's plenty of gerrymandering coming out of New York City to make sure that it happens this way. But that the state of New York has that many Democrat seats, that actually surprised me a little bit. I would like to see how the districts are drawn, especially in upstate, to see how that works, but it just seems to me like there's the small sliver of New York that connects to the Holland Tunnel that is heavily, heavily blue, and from everything else that I've seen, especially on a county-by-county voting map, all the stuff up here in the parts that most of America forgets are New York are redder than a baboon's ass. So I'd be interested to see how both this previous map were drawn, how the Democrats' map were drawn, and how the current map, the one they're proposing, is drawn. I'd kind of like to see that because, yeah, I mean, again, going by a county-by-county basis, this just doesn't make any sense to me by landmass, but it is what it is. Looking in at some of the races from last night. Paul Booker fall matchup set up in Kentucky Senate race. From Bruce Schreiner, this is one that they want to bump off so bad. With the Democrats who stood in lockstep in the Senate, 50 votes to go runoff, and Republicans as well, 49 votes to go send all that money over to Ukraine, and one man standing in their way. This race became personal because this race took a lot of money out of the Hong Kong establishment's pockets. So, for Bruce Schreiner, Republican U.S. Senator Rand Paul looked past his fall opponent Tuesday to slam national Democrats, while his Democrat challenger doubled down on his progressive message. Oh Jesus, that's going to play well in Kentucky, and vowed to take the fight to the incumbent with a matchup featuring contrasting agendas. The libertarian-leaning Paul coasted a victory over 5 little-known Republican challengers in his primary. Charlie Booker, a black former state lawmaker, defeated 3 primary opponents to become the latest nominee to try to snap the long losing streak of Kentucky Democrats in U.S. Senate races. The bluegrass state hasn't elected a Democrat to the Senate since Wendell Ford in 1992. I feel like I'm watching football here. Especially when we go through these primary races and they go in and it's like listening to Troy Aikman and Shannon Sharp and all these guys sit around the table and say, well, this is the longest passing yard since this one here in 1996, and remember when this guy over here did this, and this person held the record for this until... Don't you kind of get some of that play-by-play? Dude, we need to get the woke back out of sports so we can go back to watching sports, so we stop doing this kind of analysis here. I mean, come on. Paul, who's seeking a third term, immediately set the tone for his fall campaign, telling supporters in a video message that he was back in the nation's capital battling the socialists and petty tyrants. He didn't mention Booker, instead aiming criticism at the nation's top Democrats, President Biden, House Speaker Pelosi, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer. Kentucky and all of America deserve better than massive spending, runaway debt, and crippling inflation that Biden, Pelosi, and Schumer are giving us, he said. I'm working every day to fight back, and I hope that you'll continue to support me. Booker, looking to blaze a new trail to a Kentucky Senate seat, fully embraced a progressive agenda that includes support for sweeping healthcare and anti-poverty programs. We're actually going to lean in, he said in an interview on Kentucky Educational Television. This is not the time to be moderate. You cannot moderately put a fire out. We're going to be bold in fighting for Kentucky. The results are going to show that is how you win. Booker vowed to take his message to areas that have been overlooked or taken for granted. We're going to win by engaging communities that don't typically vote, communities that have been Republican for a long time, but really just because Democrats don't go, and giving our folks a reason to turn out, he said on KET. Yet he faces a daunting task in trying to unseat Paul. Kentucky is tilted decidedly towards the GOP, and Paul holds a commanding fundraising advantage over his Democratic challenger. Paul, who ran unsuccessfully for president in 2016, gained national voice in promoting a philosophy of limited government and restraint in U.S. foreign policy. He's known for giving his own way at times in the Senate. Last week, Paul defied leaders of both parties and single-handedly delayed a Senate approval of an additional $40 billion to help Ukraine and its allies withstand Russia's invasion. And that's part of the reason that this race is up. For the most part, for Kentucky, for Rand Paul, this would have been, because, Idaho, the primaries were there, but I don't have any major stories about that. Several other states had primaries last night. Nobody was really talking about them. But this is one off of there because Rand Paul just he's been making news for a while, but he just made major news by establishment and saying, no, I think that we do need to come back and talk about this at least before we print off these $40 billion. So now they are desperate to get him unseated. As far as Kentucky goes, statistically, I don't think it's possible. But we've seen stranger things happen before. A president who never campaigned is now the president of the United States. Let's look up to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania Senate GOP primary, too close to call for Dr. Oz. I hope he gets knocked out. I really hope that he gets knocked out. Dr. Oz was in an extremely tight race with David McCormick in Pennsylvania's Republican U.S. Senate primary late Tuesday night in one of the most closely watched nominating contests in the election cycle. With about 94% of the vote counted, McCormick led by a razor-thin margin with 31.4% compared to Oz's 31.1, at around 11:30 p.m. Kathy Barnett was in third place with 24.5% of the vote. A final tally, with the leader ahead by less than 0.5%, would trigger an automatic recount. Oz, who was Trump's endorsement. Yeah, bad pick, Donald. You're usually good as a kingmaker, but bad pick. Would be the nation's first Muslim senator, while Barnett would be Pennsylvania's first black senator. McCormick, who earned $22 million last year, would be one of Congress's richest members. Trump visited Pennsylvania to stump for Oz the final stretch of the campaign, but journalists noted that some crowd members jeered Oz, whose participation in Turkish elections and PR work for Turkish Airlines emerged as campaign issues. That right there should be a disqualifying factor, but, try to tell our current Congress that dual citizenship is a bad idea in Congress. You know what I'm saying. On the Democratic side, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman easily defeated U.S. Rep. Connor Lamb and State Rep. Malcolm Kenyatta, despite undergoing surgery on primary day to install a pacemaker and a defibrillator after suffering a stroke last week. McCormick, until the year of the CEO of Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund, garnered support from the Trump West Wing advisors Kellyanne Conway and Hope Hicks, and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, a super PAC backing McCormick's candidacy, reportedly spent more than $17 million versus $3 million by a similar group backing Oz. Trump passed over McCormick, who's married to former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell, despite aggressive lobbying from fellow Republicans. I don't know, I would have gone with Barnett if it was me. McCormick campaign has been buffeted by criticism of Bridgewater's decision to raise $1.25 billion last year for new investments in China, making the firm one of the top foreign investors in China. His allies denied that he offshored jobs to India at a different company. So that's what we see coming off of that. And as of right now, we don't know who the nominee is going to be, but I don't like either of these people that are at the top. I would have liked to see Barnett if it was me. That's what I would have liked to see. Grassroots, insurgency candidate, a powerful message on abortion. I like these things. A powerful message on abortion, by the way, that doesn't include government control in either direction. Trying to make it more societally unpalatable, rather than legally unpalatable. I like these things. But we'll continue to watch that and see where that goes. In the upset of the night, Trump-backed Madison Cawthorn concedes North Carolina Republican primary race. And by the way, I tweeted out to Parag Agrawal, because I want to see if he can clean up some of the jizz on my fucking timeline. From all these men, and it's all men, by the way, too, who are obsessed with the fact that we got rid of Madison Cawthorn! Oh, we got rid of Madison Cawthorn! Sorry for the graphic image on that, but, I mean, you've seen the timeline. You know what it is. From Kevin Breininger. Madison Cawthorn, the scandal-prone freshman lawmaker backed by former President Trump, conceded defeat in his Republican primary election, Cawthorn's spokesman told reporters Tuesday night. Cawthorn called State Senator Chuck Edwards to concede the race, the spokesman said. According to NBC News, Edwards has been endorsed by U.S. Senator Tom Tillis. NBC has yet to project a winner in Cawthorn's congressional district. Well, if he conceded, then Edwards won. Madison Cawthorn tweeted out, "Congratulations to Chuck Edwards on securing the nomination tonight. It's time for the North Carolina 11 GOP to rally behind the Republican ticket to defeat the Democrats' nominee this November." North Carolina voters on Tuesday had already decided who will compete in one of this year's critical U.S. Senate races. Ted Budd will win the Republican Senate primary in the race to fill the seat of retiring GOP Senator Richard Burr, NBC projected. Budd is backed by both Trump and the influential conservative group Club for Growth. He will face off in the general against Cherry Baisley, former Chief Justice of the New York Supreme Court, who NBC projected would handily clinch the Democratic nomination. The swing state contest is one of a handful that will determine whether Democrats keep their majority in the Senate, split by 50-50 by party. Cawthorn is one of 13 U.S. House members from North Carolina. Now 26 years old, Cawthorn is the youngest member of Congress when he was elected in 2020. His seat, which was previously held by ex-Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, is a safe Republican district. So, I'm not entirely surprised by this. I'm not going to lie. This is a race. And by the way, looking in at, like, Georgia 14, the Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, the obsession has been with trying to get some of these people primaried out and throwing scandal after scandal to try to turn the GOP against them, because they're in districts that are insanely safe, just as NBC said. There is absolutely zero chance that this district goes Republican. Or, I'm sorry, goes Democrat. The same with Georgia 14. I mean, Marcus Flowers can say, I'm going to unseat Marjorie Taylor Greene in however many days it's going to be until Election Day. He can post that on Twitter all that he wants over and over again, and yet his Act Blue funding, and by the way, watch for the Act Blue, his Act Blue funding is going to go into whichever race is the tightest. All that money that he raised is in a gigantic slush fund. Because everybody knows that there's not going to be a Democrat Congress member in Georgia 14. I would honestly argue that this Booker guy that they're trying to promote over Rand Paul is probably in the same boat. They realistically don't think that he can beat Rand Paul in Kentucky in this current political climate. Or maybe that's where all Marcus Flowers' money is going to go to. But there are the big stories from last night's primaries. Let's grab one more here on the midterms before we go talk about the Biden speech. Bill de Blasio eyeing run at newly drawn New York seat Gerald Nadler has left behind. From Bernadette Hogan. There you go, Congressman Bill de Blasio. Just when you thought he was out. Ex-Mayor Bill de Blasio told state lawmakers that he plans to run for New York's newly drawn 10th district. The seat entrenched Rep. Gerald Nadler is vacating to fight it out with former longtime ally Rep. Carolyn Maloney in the rejigged 12th. De Blasio told State Assemblyman Simcha Eichenstein, Democrat Borough Park, Tuesday afternoon that he is committed to running in the race. He's in, he's running, he's calling people, said Eichenstein, telling the Post de Blasio had a list of donors and other elected officials to inform. Based on the conversation that I had with him earlier today, he is running for the new New York 10 congressional district. He called me earlier this afternoon. While I keep our conversation private, I confirmed that we spoke for over 20 minutes about his decision to run for the district. De Blasio considered a run for New York 11 before the state's redistricting maps were thrown out for the first time, but then dropped his bid in February before it started. Those neighborhoods are not foreign to him. He's been representing some of these neighborhoods since 2001, and whether it's been perfect or not at all times, these relationships are long-standing and run deep, Eichenstein added, of the new district. So, that's what we see coming off of that. Coming down here, another source told the Post that Penny Ringel, who worked as de Blasio's City Hall liaison to the Orthodox Jewish community on Monday, called a community leader in Brooklyn to gauge support for his boss and present a case in favor of his candidacy. He's not going to get the Orthodox support, said the source. The average Joe on the street believes Bill de Blasio is the worst mayor ever. A draft plan for the newly drawn 10th stretches from Lower Manhattan, including Tribeca, Greenwich Village, and East Village, and the Lower East Side into Brooklyn, including parts of Dumbo, Brooklyn Heights, de Blasio's own Park Slope neighborhood, along with Prospect Heights, Windsor, Terrace, and Borough Park. Boundaries for the new districts will be finalized on Friday. So that's what we see coming out of the de Blasio race. Let's talk about Biden. Reading from CNN. Biden gives emotional speech after Buffalo shooting. White supremacy is poison, from Megan Vasquez. I'm going to skip the quotes because no, we'll do some of the quotes here, but I do actually have the speech queued up here with certain timestamps that I wrote down on the closest piece of paper I could find for me at the time on stuff that I do want to talk about with this. But let's talk here. President Biden on Tuesday did not hesitate to call the deadly mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, an act of terrorism, condemning the racist ideology of the suspected shooter. White supremacy is a poison. It's a poison running through our body politic, Biden said, adding that silence is complicity. And it's been allowed to grow and fester right before our eyes, man. Come on, he continued. No more. We need to say as clearly, as forcefully as we can, that the ideology of white supremacy has no place in America. None. He added, in America, evil will not win, I promise you. Hate will not prevail. Well, white supremacy will not have the last word. The evil did come to Buffalo, and it's come to too many places. Manifested in gunmen who massacred innocent people in the name of a hateful and perverse ideology. Speaking at the close of his visit to the city, the president remembered each of the victims of the shooting at the grocery store frequented by a largely black clientele, becoming visibly emotional as he described how they were remembered by their families and their community. And he did. He went through a very long speech. A very long segment of it. It's actually what's between the stars here. Remembering and naming all the victims and what it was that they were doing when they went to the store, allegedly. Pressed on whether Republicans who have promoted the replacement theory deserve blame, Biden told reporters ahead of the departure from Buffalo, I believe that anyone who echoes replacement is to blame. Not for this particular crime, but it's for no purpose except to profit or politically benefit, and it's wrong. It's just simply been wrong. White House is mulling steps on gun reform, but acknowledges limitations as well. So we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. Let's grab one from CNBC. Actually, you know what? Let's actually grab the speech. I think this is the time to go and listen to this. So there are a couple spots to this that I do want to touch on. It'll be after the victim's naming. So let's listen to this here. And as I said in the announcement on Twitter, he addresses both Charlottesville and January 6th in this. Now, Charlottesville I could understand, but wait until you hear how he addresses January 6th. Let's listen.
The hate that through the media and politics, the internet, has radicalized, angry, alienated, lost, and isolated individuals into falsely believing that they will be replaced, that's the word, replaced, by the other, by people who don't look like them, and who are, therefore, in a perverse ideology that they possess and being fed lesser beings. I and all of you reject the lie. I call on all Americans to reject the lie. And I condemn those who spread the lie for power, political gain, and for profit. That's what it is. We've now seen too many times the deadly and destructive violence this ideology unleashes. We heard the chants, "You will not replace us," in Charlottesville, Virginia. I wasn't going to run, as the senator knows, again for president. When I saw those people coming out of the woods of the fields in Virginia, in Charlottesville, carrying torches, shouting, "You will not replace us," accompanied by white supremacists and carrying Nazi banners, that's when I said, no. And I, honest to God, those who know me, Chuck, I wasn't going to run for certain. But I was going to be darned if I was going to let anyway. I'm going to get going. Look, we've seen the mass shootings in Charleston, South Carolina, El Paso, Texas, and Pittsburgh, last year in Atlanta, this week in Dallas, Texas, and now in Buffalo.
Buffalo.
White supremacy is a poison. It's a poison running through it. It really is.
So there's that. And, like I say, he for obvious reasons, he brought up the Charlottesville thing because to him, that's important. That's the most important. Let's keep going.
Running through our body politic. And it's been allowed to fester and grow right in front of our eyes. No more. No more. We need to say as clearly and forcefully as we can that the ideology of white supremacy has no place in America. None. And look, failure for us to not say that, failure in saying that, is going to be complicity. Silence is complicity. It's complicity. We cannot remain silent. Our nation's strength has always come from the idea It's going to sound corny, but think about it. What's the idea of our nation? That we're all children of God. All life, liberty, our universal goods, gifts of God. We didn't get it from a government, we got it from because we exist. We're called upon to defend them. The venom of the haters and their weapons of war, the violence and the words and deeds that stalk our streets, our stores, our schools. This venom, this violence cannot be the story of our time. We cannot allow that to happen. Look, I'm not naive. I know tragedy will come again. It cannot be forever overcome. It cannot be fully understood either. But there are certain things we can do. We can keep assault weapons off our streets. We've done it before. I did it when we passed the crime bill last time, and violence went down, shootings went down. You can't prevent people from being radicalized to violence, but we can address the relentless exploitation of the internet to recruit and mobilize terrorism.
And I wanted to make sure that part of the clip got into this because, and I would have skipped all the way ahead to the January 6th stuff if it hadn't been for that part of the clip, because that to me, and one of the things right away when I heard about this, when I started seeing radicalized by 4chan and using a Bushmaster AR style rifle, I said, so you're going to expect me to believe that this is not a Fed op when he used the weapon that they're trying to ban and was claimed to be radicalized by the website that they're trying to ban. And here it is in Biden's speech, trying to stoke more fear right into it with everybody. Oh, well, I ended. I did. It wasn't the Senate. It wasn't the people that voted with me. I got assault weapons off the street, man. Come on. Which is funny because on a single person basis, most people usually attribute that to Bill Clinton, not Joe Biden. But we'll leave that one out of that for right now. But and we can live a world without we can live a world without assault weapons and make sure that the internet, the hate on the internet gets shut down so it's not allowed to spread. I don't know. What does that sound like he's trying to say to you?
We just need to have the courage to do that, to stand up. Look, the American experiment in democracy is in a danger like it hasn't been in my lifetime. It's in danger this hour. Hate and fear are being given too much oxygen by those who pretend to love America, but who don't understand America. To confront the ideology of hate requires caring about all people, not making distinctions. Reverend, the scripture is seeing that we're all part of the divine. Love thy neighbor as thyself. That's the America I know.
Dude, if I was a tech producer right now and had any semblance of religion in me, if I was the tech producer behind here, I'd start backing away from the podium real slowly, waiting for that bolt of lightning to come down.
Knows. And most deserve the most. Look, we're the most multiracial, most dynamic nation in the history of the world. Now's the time for the people of all races, from every background, to speak up as a majority in America and reject white supremacy. These actions we've seen in these hate-filled attacks represent the views of a hate-filled minority. We can't allow them to distort America, the real America. We can't allow them to destroy the soul of the nation. As President of the United States, I travel the world all the time. And other nations ask me, heads of state in other countries, ask me, what's going on? What in God's name happened on January 6th? What happened in Buffalo? What happened? They ask. We have to refuse to live in a country where black people going about a weekly grocery shopping can be gunned down by weapons of war deployed in a racist cause.
People around the country ask me, what happened on January 6th? So, as I said, he's trying to... There are a couple points to the speech. Whoever wrote the speech, as a strategist, is A, a partisan hack, but B, a genius, because he is. He is trying to invoke and keep the things that they want people to be remembering in the people's heads. They don't want people to go into the polls remembering the baby formula shortage, 8.5% inflation, $5 gas. They don't want these people remembering that. They want them remembering January 6th, Madison Cawthorn, Charlottesville, I ran. I wasn't going to run, the senator knows, but I ran. Which is a load of fucking bullshit, by the way. And if you did run, it wasn't because of January 6th. Or, I'm sorry, not because of January 6th, because of Charlottesville. It wasn't because of that. It was because the Donald and the DOJ got a little bit too close to the operation that you were running. But that's what they want out of Charlottesville, January 6th. These white Christians think they're being replaced. They're terrible. They're evil. And we have to vote them all out. So, that is what we see for that. Thank you, President Biden. Let's see. Biden consoles Buffalo shooting mourners, says white supremacy will not have the last word. From Thomas Frank. President Brandon on Tuesday denounced the poison of white supremacy and racist replacement theory, which he probably hadn't heard of until this week, that fueled this weekend's mass shootings in Buffalo, New York, where a white gunman opened fire in a supermarket in one of the city's predominantly black communities. In America, evil will not win, I promise you, Biden said to the assembled crowd of mourners and local officials. Hate will not prevail. White supremacy will not have the last word. Biden spent much of the day in western New York, where law enforcement officials say Peyton Gendron committed an act of racially motivated violence when he shot 13 people with a semi-automatic rifle at the Tops Friendly Market on Saturday. 10 people were killed. The president and the first lady paid their respects to the lives lost in Saturday's tragic shooting in a visit to a memorial and met with local law enforcement and first responders. Guess where they didn't go last November? Just so you know. Biden also criticized government officials and media figures who publicized the Great Replacement Theory, a conspiracy theory that racial minorities seek to replace and disempower white people in the U.S. Authorities are investigating Gendron's social media profiles, including a 180-page manifesto he is suspected of writing that touts the theory. I've read it. Authorities are not investigating it. Authorities wrote that fucking thing. I don't care if Wojcicki gets me for that at this point. And usually I do dance around some of the obvious fed up ones, but I read that thing, and there is no way that 18-year-old kid wrote that. Authorities are investigating Gendron's social media profiles, including a 180-page manifesto. Oh, I read that one already. Hate through the media and politics and the internet has radicalized, angry, alienated, lost, and isolated individuals into falsely believing that they will be replaced. That's the word, replaced, by the other. So, that's what they have off of that. And as the Daily Wire puts up, and we'll talk with that too, Biden jumps on the bandwagon of replacement theory and how that's the next evil. This seems to be the same thing that we just saw with the last one, so we'll jump off of that. From the Daily Wire, Biden jumps on the bandwagon, saying peddling a replacement theory fueled by hate behind Buffalo shooting. President Brandon joined a host of prominent Democrats and media talking heads in laying at least a portion of the blame for fueling the hatred behind last weekend's mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, at the feet of anyone who amplified the Great Replacement theory. Biden took a few questions from reporters on Tuesday. Shocker. as he traveled to Buffalo to meet with members of the community still reeling from the shooting that left 10 dead, and he addressed the white suspects' claims, published in a lengthy racism-fueled diatribe that white Americans are being replaced by minorities. Let's listen, because of course he's got to go talk about Tucker Carlson.
Do you believe that certain members of Congress, the Republican Party, as well as Tucker Carlson, who have echoed the replacement theory, deserve some blame for violent acts?
I believe anybody who echoes the replacement is to blame, not for this particular crime, but it's for no purpose except profit and or political benefit. And it's wrong. It's just simply wrong.
What more can you do on...
And anybody who peddles. And by the way, this is a very leading question by a reporter that Biden actually cannot answer. Like, if Biden specifically went after and tried to say that Tucker Carlson needs to be silenced, or this is all Tucker's fault, or anything else like that, and the Donald actually danced around this too. He got a lot closer than was comfortable for me for the First Amendment. But if Biden were to come out and say that Tucker needs to be silenced or this or that, the next thing, he would be in violation of the First Amendment. A government attack on the free press, however corporatized it may be. I'm not a fan of Tucker. I think that he should have his right to be able to see and say all the stupid fucking shit that he wants. But I think that we need to create better replacements, better programming, so people choose not to watch him and choose to watch the better programming, especially coming from the independent side. Because as much as you like to say, oh, well, Fox News lets him say whatever he wants. No, they don't. He's handed a script. It's focus group tested. To bring up the proper level of outrage. And again, he should be able to say whatever he wants, or whatever the corporates tell him to. But there should be people out there that do things off script, off monologue, that can stand up and be his competition. But for Biden to say it, now for me to say it as a competitor, that's probably understandable. I say, Tucker sucks. Watch the Daily Ignoramus. But for Biden to say that Tucker sucks, he needs to be taken off the air, that's a violation of the First Amendment. So consider that as we go. And he did do a very good job, even in his dementia-riddled mind, of dancing around the idea that he actually can't say that. So that's what he has to say off of that. Let's listen to Ana Navarro, because I know that you guys love that. Ana Navarro is not bound by the First Amendment and can say whatever stupid thing that she wants. The Recount tweets out after Buffalo mass shooting, the View guest co-host Ana Navarro goes off on everyone involved in Fox News, for spreading hate for profit. If you are an advertiser, if you sit on the board, if you're a Republican donor, if you're a staffer, you are part of the problem.
And listen, if you are an advertiser, advertising on that station, you are part of the problem. If you sit on the board and are trying to be a civilized person, Paul Ryan, my friend, I'm talking to you, you are part of the problem. Yep. If you're a Republican donor tweeting about how bad you feel about this, but you're donating to people like Liz Stefanik, you are part of the problem. Yeah. If you are a staffer working for them, you are part of the problem. If you are voting for them, you...
Like seals, like trained seals.
You are part of the problem. So I'll tell you what great replacement theory should be. We should replace all these people peddling hate and making financial and political gain from spreading racism. We should replace them with people who hold up American values. Right. And listen, if you...
Look, I've never sat down and watched an episode of The View. So I will admit that there may be some selective editing going on versus the people who are circulating the clips that I have watched of The View. But from everything that I have seen of The View, there are certain people who are spreading hate, and it's not the Republicans and Fox News. Although they do their fair share, don't get me wrong. But there's another large group of people who are spreading hate. Just Just putting that out there. So that's what we see coming off of that. And now Biden is back home because, again, going to Buffalo because white supremacist killing black people, that scores political points for him in an election year. But black supremacist mowing down white people in a fairly conservative neighborhood, by the way. I'm familiar with Waukesha because it's, 40 miles over there, over that direction? I've been through that city numerous times. Black supremacists from Milwaukee mowing down dozens of white Christian conservatives in a fairly conservative city, which is surprising to say that close to Milwaukee. Yeah, though that doesn't denote a presidential visit. Maybe a first lady visit, but that doesn't denote a presidential visit. But this one here, on an election year, oh yeah, that definitely denotes a presidential visit. Let's keep going. From the post-millennial, talking more about Biden and some of his policies that are coming up. Biden administration reverses Trump policy, sends troops to Somalia. From Libby Emmons. The Biden admin is deploying U.S. troops to Somalia. President Biden signed off on the plan on Monday, along with a plan to target some dozen leaders of al-Shabaab. Trump had withdrawn troops from the war-torn region near the end of his time in office. About 450 troops will be sent to Somalia on Africa's east coast. Guess what, guys? We're going back to war! And a place that most of Biden's supporters can't find on a map. The troops being redeployed to Somalia are Special Operations Forces, and the Pentagon has also been given authority to target leaders of al-Shabaab, a terrorist group affiliated with al-Qaeda, according to the New York Times, a former newspaper. Officials spoke to the Times on condition of anonymity, saying that this is essentially will revive an open-ended American counterterrorism operation that has amounted to a slow-burn war throughout 3 administrations. Biden pulled the U.S. out of a long war in Afghanistan in August of 2021. No, he botched a pullout. The withdrawal promised by outgoing President Trump was widely criticized and disorganized and chaotic. It resulted in the deaths of 13 U.S. service members. The decision to reintroduce a persistent presence was made to maximize the safety and effectiveness of our forces and enable them to provide more efficient support to our partners, said National Security spokeswoman Adrienne Watson. She called the decision by Trump admin to withdraw troops precipitous. The concern is that al-Shabaab poses a threat to U.S. outposts in the region, including an attack on a U.S. airbase in Kenya in January of 2020. The official told the Times that the plan with this new deployment is to bring the threat level to a level that is tolerable. The U.S. under Biden's leadership is also engaged in a conflict in Ukraine, providing that nation with arms as well as billions of dollars to assist them to fight off neighboring Russia, which invaded in February. I had an idea. Instead of sending 450 troops and reactivating us into an active war zone, let's send our great communicator, Ilhan Omar, to Somalia to go negotiate for peace. And by the way, let's also send her husband, Tim Minette, with her for emotional support. I'm sure that'll go over real well. So, we're going back there, a little bit of analysis to go with that. From CNN, Biden approves the plan to redeploy U.S. troops to Somalia, from Natasha Bertrand. President Brandon has approved a request by the Pentagon to redeploy U.S. troops to Somalia in an effort to counter the terrorism of al-Shabaab, a senior admin official said on Monday. The move reverses a decision by President Trump to withdraw all U.S. troops from the country in 2020. The U.S. will reposition U.S. forces in East Africa in a move to restore U.S. military presence in Somalia at consultation with the Somali government, the official told reporters. Yeah, it's always a consultation. You notice that too? We always go in there in an advisory role. We're in there to train. We're in there to do this. And then the next thing you know, it's a conflict. But it's not a war because Congress never declared a war. The U.S. will reposition U.S. forces in East Africa and move to restore a U.S. military presence in Somalia. That's what we said here. Troops will be sent back to the country. I'm sorry, the official said under 500 troops will be sent back to the country, but declined to provide a precise number. He emphasized, however, that the Pentagon will not be restoring the full contingent of operators present in Somalia before the previous admin's withdrawal, which was about 750 military personnel. The official described the Trump admin's withdrawal as abrupt and sudden and said that al-Shabaab has unfortunately grown only stronger since then. We have seen regrettably clear evidence that al-Shabaab has the intent and capability to target Americans, the official said. Nothing that group had killed over a dozen Americans in East Africa in recent years, including 3 at a U.S. military base in Kenya in early 2020. Trump's decision in December to withdraw U.S. personnel from Somalia was part of a broader effort in the waning days of his admin to pull back U.S. involvement in global conflicts, including in Afghanistan and Iraq. But the Biden admin believes that al-Shabaab remains a notable priority, given the threat it poses, and the ability to go back and launder money back for the U.S., by the way, and that a persistent U.S. presence there will be necessary to counter the group. I hope that you all bought stock. If you didn't buy stock in Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and any other defense contractor that you can find at the outset of the admin, I hope and pray that you saw the golden opportunity after the Ukraine bullshit. Because here we are. More weapons, more military personnel, and our president, our wonderful, great Democrat president for the party that used to be anti-war, ready to go out and deploy more of your 18-year-old sons to a country that you can't even find on a map. God bless America. Wall Street Journal has an opinion piece here I want to touch on just a bit here. President Biden's return to Somalia. From the editorial board, no author given it looks like. It's a little shorty, 2-minute read. President Biden ran on a promise to end forever wars, a policy that culminated in a strategically and morally disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. The news this week is that U.S. troops are returning to Somalia is a welcome sign that the White House knows it can't continue to ignore inconvenient security problems. Oh my God. The Wall Street Journal is defending this shit. U.S. officials confirmed Monday that no more than 500 U.S. troops would redeploy to the East African nation, where al-Shabaab, perhaps al-Qaeda's most powerful affiliate, continues to control territory and carry out terror attacks. Trump's withdrew from the country in the closing days of his presidency, but U.S. forces have since made inefficient and dangerous trips in and out of Somalia for temporary deployments. The permanent presence is a small commitment, but important part of the fight against terrorism, because we don't fight wars in this country against other countries. We fight against ideas, the war on drugs, the war on crime, the war on terror. Coming and going was disruptive to operations, while more consistency may raise the morale of local forces who carry the bulk of the burden. African Union countries contribute some 19,000 troops to a peacekeeping force, though American intelligence and air power are critical to the mission, because of course they are. Because we have 70 to 80 senators who make money off American intelligence and air power. America's small permanent presence may also boost influence over Somalia's dysfunctional central government, The corruption and political chaos in Mogadishu often undermine the counterterrorism mission, but Afghanistan provided a reminder that countries can end up with worse regimes than flawed Western-backed governments. So, as we do in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and now Somalia again, the U.S. forces go back in, fuck everything up, and now we will have, again, another refugee crisis. Aren't you excited? So that's what we see off of that. Some news on the baby formula front. Since we have one of our resident mothers in the chat right now, I see. Abbott Labs, FDA reached deal on reopening shuttered baby formula factory, from Gabrielle von Roog. I did, by the way, see some information that said that the FDA was permanently keeping this down. I've not seen anything green checked to counter that up, and you guys know the standard that I use for this program. Abbott Labs, whose recall of infant formulas made at a Michigan plant has been widely blamed for a nationwide shortage, announced on Monday it had reached an agreement with the FDA on the steps needed to restart production, but it will still be weeks before any formula hits the store shelves. So they've made the agreement, but we're still not going to see anything until, I believe the first report said was August. Abbott also claimed in its announcement that the CDC had found no conclusive evidence linking formulas made at its Sturgis, Michigan facility to the infant illnesses and deaths that triggered the initial recall in February. Once the court signs off on the deal and the FDA gives the go-ahead to reopen the problem-plagued facility, Abbott could restart formula production within 2 weeks, though it will still be 6 to 8 weeks before its products become publicly available. Details of the agreement, known as consent decree, were not immediately disclosed. Our number one priority is getting infants and families the high-quality formulas that they need. This was a major step towards reopening the Sturgis facility, so we can ease the nationwide formula shortage. We were looking forward to working with the FDA to quickly and safely reopen the facility, Abbott Chairman and CEO Robert B. Ford said in a statement. We know millions of parents and caregivers depend on us, and we're deeply sorry that our voluntary recall worsened the nationwide formula shortage. We work hard to re-earn the trust that moms, dads, and caregivers have placed in our formulas for more than 50 years. And one thing that I can note for this right now is the fact that there does seem to be a major push to get these resources back coming out of the private network. People are doing shopping networks. People who were formerly mothers of infants, who are now mothers of toddlers and even children, are now going through either their own stock or going to different stores trying to pan out and find specific formulas that the moms that are in need. There are big networks going around social media to see that, and I'm happy to see that. I really am. From what I understand, my sister's involved in one of those, and my sister's a good person, so definitely go and check that out. And yeah, it's still going to be a while before we see any of this. I know they're talking about importing some of this as well, but I don't know at what point do we see a problem with that, whether or not it's the travel time. Does it have to come on ship? Does it have to come on plane? If it has to come on plane, will it be enough to offset the shortage right now? Or will our stuff be hitting the shelves by the time the ship gets across the ocean? There's so many other logistical problems that go along with this, but that is where we are at with that right now. Let's grab one from the Blaze. Morgan Stanley analyst directly blames Biden's excessive fiscal stimulus for a surge of inflation. It's not just his, unfortunately. His predecessor has some of the blame as well, which is why, when they sent the stimmy, because I don't trust the government having my financial information, even though they are desperately trying to, they send me letters all the time saying, hey, we noticed you didn't cash this check. Reach out to us and we'll send you a new one because your other one expired. Hey, we noticed you didn't cash this. I cut that first one up because I didn't want to be responsible for what we are seeing right now. I told you all the way back then that this would cause inflation. from Carlos Garcia. An analysis of the economy by Morgan Stanley put the blame directly on the excessive fiscal stimulus spending by the Biden admin for the surge of inflation that is hurting many Americans. Michael Wilson led a team of analysts in the assessment released on Monday. In summary, the slack created by the COVID recession is being absorbed much faster than usual. While some of the absorption is due to the supply disruptions created by the lockdowns, we think it was more so due to the excessive fiscal stimulus provided during the pandemic, particularly the last $1.9 trillion package at the end of March of 2021, just as the economy was already emerging from the lockdowns, the analysis read. Our view, this was what turbocharged consumption and drove high inflation. It continued. In other words, we created too much demand for the supply chains to handle. The fact that supply chains have been impaired to some degree only exacerbated the shortages and inflation, especially for consumer goods, they concluded. The stock market has been plummeting in the last month as inflation worries crush investors' hopes of companies' earnings justifying their valuations. It's interesting, but again, it may have ended and exacerbated under the Biden admin, but it didn't start there. And a lot of this also had to do with local governments who were shutting down, who were being urged to shut down, partially by members who would eventually come to be part of this administration. But it's not just on Biden. There's a lot of corruption and rot in the government that led to this. What else do we have? Clarence Thomas got into the news. Clarence Thomas telling people, "I will absolutely leave the court when I do my job as poorly as you do yours."
One of the things I say in response to the media is when they talk about, or especially early on, about the way I did my job, I said, I will absolutely leave the court when I do my job as poorly as you do yours. And that was meant as a compliment, really.
I think we've neglected this side of the room.
Oh, gosh.
All the way over here, yes.
It really is good to be me. It really is.
Very quick.
One of the things
I thought it was funny. What else do we have? Oh, let's talk about our new token in the Biden admin. Clay Travis, one of the replacements for Rush Limbaugh, says, "How is every single person in the Biden admin, from the president on down, so absolutely awful at public speaking and communication? Every day they get more embarrassing. I don't even know what she's trying to read here."
Is an important part of that as well.
But how does raising taxes on corporations lower the cost of gas, the cost of a used car, the cost of food for everyday Americans?
So look, I think we encourage those who have done very well, right, especially those who care about climate change, to support a fair tax code that doesn't charge manufacturers, workers, cops, builders a higher percentage of their earnings, that the most fortunate people in our nation, and not let that stand in the way of reducing energy costs and fighting this existential problem, if you think about that as an example. And to support basic collective bargaining rights as well, right? That's also important. But look, it is, without having a fair tax code, which is what I'm talking about, then like manufacturing workers, cops, it's not fair for them to have to pay higher taxes than the folks who are not paying taxes at all. Is an important part of that.
Did anybody catch any of that? The question was, how are higher taxes going to help offset what we're seeing here? And the answer was, well, we need to go back and unionize, and we need to go do some more about climate change. Let's talk about the Sussman trial from the Daily Wire. Sussman trial opens, lawyers spar over defendant's 2016 lie to the FBI. Cybersecurity attorney Michael Sussman's defense team dueled prosecutors in an opening statement on the second day of Sussman's trial on Tuesday. Sussman is facing up to 5 years on a single charge of making false statements to the FBI during the 2016 meeting with the Bureau's general counsel, in which Sussman made later debunked claims of a secret back channel between the Trump organization and a Russian bank. The court wrapped up jury selection, and by the way, there are people that still believe that. The court wrapped up jury selection on Monday and launched into the first day of testimony the following day. Deborah Shaw, the prosecutor, started off the day's proceedings. She said the case will show in the coming weeks that Sussman's trial is about privilege, possibly a shaded reference to pretrial fights over what is considered protected under attorney-client privilege. According to the Washington Examiner, prosecutors led by special counsel John Durham wrestled with Sussman's defense team, Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, the investigative firm Fusion GPS, and the Democrat-linked law firm Perkins Coie over communications in the weeks leading up to the trial. Sussman, who was an attorney at Perkins Coie in 2016, is accused of intentionally hiding from the FBI his clients, the Clinton campaign, and an executive at the computer analytics firm Neustar. This was not a mistake or a slip of the tongue. It was a concerted effort to conceal his clients, Shaw said, according to The Hill. You're going to see how it misled officials into thinking that he was acting as a good citizen. This is rich, coming out of Washington, D.C. The FBI should never be used as a political pawn. Oh wait, you're serious. Hold on, let me laugh even harder. Defense attorney Michael Bosworth asserted that Sussman never lied to the FBI, and even if he did, it would not have mattered. Sussman didn't lie to the FBI, Bosworth told the jury. Michael Sussman wouldn't lie to the FBI. His whole livelihood depended on his credibility with these agencies, and he'd never throw that away. Bosworth stated that Sussman's interests were clear to the FBI from the beginning. He was someone the FBI knew represented partisan clients, Bosworth said. According to the Associated Press, the FBI knew that he represented the Clinton campaign that summer. The FBI knew that he was an attorney for the DNC, the Democrat Party itself. So that's what we're seeing off the beginning of this. Grab one from CNN. Prosecutors say Clinton campaign lawyer tried to manipulate the FBI with Trump-Russia tip as first Durham trial opens. From Marshall Cohen. Special counsel John Durham prosecutors laid out their case against Hillary campaign lawyer Michael Sussman during opening statements Tuesday, accusing him of scheming to inject the FBI into a presidential election by peddling an ultimately unsubstantiated tip about Donald Trump's ties to Russia 8 weeks before Election Day. The defendant's lie was all part of a bigger plan. It was a plan to create an October surprise on the eve of the election to use and manipulate the FBI, prosecutor Britton Shaw said. She described Sussman as a high-powered DC lawyer who tried to direct the power and resources of the FBI to his own ends and to serve the agendas of his clients, who were the Clinton campaign and a tech executive. This is a case about privilege, Shaw added. Sussman's been charged with one count of lying to the FBI, and the case was brought as part of Durham's investigation into potential misconduct related to the FBI's Trump-Russia probe. The indictment accuses Sussman of falsely telling the FBI he wasn't representing any clients when he provided Trump-Russia tip on September of 2016. Sussman has pleaded not guilty. I would hate to be one of the prosecuting attorneys in this right now, because I feel like a few of them are going to get a very, very deep case of depression that was completely on set and had never been seen in them in any pattern before. Prosecutors appealed to jurors and set politics aside and appealed to jurors to set politics aside and convict Sussman because they say he abused the trust of a senior FBI official to try to help Clinton win the 2016 presidential election. Jurors' political affiliations, contributions, and volunteer work for candidates, including Clinton, repeatedly came up during the jury selection process. Yeah, it is really hard, especially when the media publicizes so many things and our country is so divided, to be in a situation where you can have an impartial jury right now. Who doesn't know who the Clintons are? And they're going to be at the center of this. Where is this getting tried? Does it say? Regardless, I mean, I would be curious, because there are a number of people out there who either love and think that Hillary Clinton should run again in 2024, or absolutely hate her. And there's really no in between. For prosecuting attorneys, it would have been a Herculean task to come back out and try desperately to find 12 jurors who can actually be impartial. Ron DeSantis is back in the news. From the New York Post, Governor DeSantis outlaws protests outside private homes in Florida. From Salim Algar. Ron DeSantis signed legislation Monday that makes it illegal to protest outside of private homes in the Sunshine State. Violators will be given one chance to disperse after an official warning and would be subject to arrest and up to 60 days in jail if they don't comply. DeSantis signed the law after protesters amassed at the homes of Supreme Court justices in recent weeks to lobby for the preservation of abortion rights. Chief Justice Roberts and Justices Alito, Kavanaugh, and Barrett have all had protesters gathered outside their Virginia homes. Sending unruly mobs to private residences like we have seen with the angry crowds in front of the homes of Supreme Court justices is inappropriate, DeSantis said in a statement. This bill will provide protection to those living in residential communities, and I'm glad to sign it into law. Look, as far as protesting goes, first and foremost, these people tend to live in very urban settings, so there's that, which is probably a good protection to the protesters out there, because, again, once my name leaks, if anybody does go back out to try to protest in front of my parents' house, those people probably never be found. I'm just saying. Because that's way out in the middle of nowhere where, well, let's just say they're never going to be found. Let's leave it at that. But when you're in these urban settings, you've got the families of the justices, the wives, the children, sometimes the mothers who are in there helping to raise some of the children, especially in a high-profile situation like the Supreme Court, where these people are at work all the goddamn time. You possibly have other family members in there that are helping, private citizens coming in, babysitters who are involved with this. And then you have the neighbors' children, people who are completely uninvolved in this and just happen to live next to this kind of person. There's so many other people at risk when you do some shit like this. If you want to protest government officials, I am all for that. I say nasty shit about them all the time. I don't go in front of their houses because, well, that's just fish in a barrel at that point. But I don't go out and protest in front of Capitol or stuff like that either, because, you'll get that one FBI agent and say, we've got to go inside the Capitol, and then you're trespassing, and again, fish in a barrel kind of thing. I don't trust the FBI. But as far as with the platform I have with the microphone and the webcam, I protest politicians all the time. I'm not against that. But leave the uninvolved people out of it, Jesus Christ. So, I don't like government involvement in this kind of thing either, but I understand where in a state like Florida, where the legislatures representing their communities would bring something like this forward. And of course, it brings more attention to Ron DeSantis, who probably is going to run for president at some point. From CBS. Judge rules California law requiring women on corporate boards is unconstitutional. An LA judge has ruled that California's landmark law requiring women on corporate boards is unconstitutional. Right, because it violates equal protection. Superior Court Judge Maureen Duffy Lewis said the law that would have required boards to have up to 3 female directors by this year violated the right to equal treatment. This ruling was dated on Friday. The conservative legal group Judicial Watch had challenged the law, claiming it was illegal to use taxpayer funds to enforce a law that violates equal protection of the California Constitution by mandating a gender-based quota, not to mention the Equal Protection Clause in the U.S. Constitution. The law was on shaky ground from the get-go, with a legislative analysis saying it could be difficult to defend the then-Governor Jerry Brown said that he was signing it despite the potential for it to be overturned by a court. Brown said he signed the bill to send a message to during the hashtag #MeToo era. Yeah, well, absolutely. It had no basis in reality. It was just a floor show, like most of the rest of politics at this point. So, what do we say to this California law? How do we give that a proper send-off? Some news about the WHO. Disclose.tv tweets out a video of Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison on the pandemic treaty. The WHO should have these powers and authorities.
The World Health Organization meets on May 22, and on the agenda is a potential pandemic treaty which would allow the WHO to direct countries in how they control pandemics. Would you consider signing up to that and handing over any controls to the organisation?
I have always been supportive right from the outset and was criticised heavily, I stress, heavily, mocked in fact by the Labor Party for saying the WHO should have those powers and those authorities to be able to go and deal with pandemic situations, because we all know what happened at the start of this pandemic. The problem is we don't know what happened at the start of this pandemic, and I was the one calling to ensure that we had an independent process to understand what happened so it couldn't be repeated. So I have been in the vanguard of those moves internationally to ensure that there is greater protection for world health, to ensure that those world health authorities can come and understand what's going on and be able to assist countries to be able to prevent the spread and outbreak of major infectious diseases. Now, we'll look at the text of all of that, but we have been amongst the countries that have been positive about these sorts of changes. Have to look closely at what the detail is in these things, as you always must. But the idea that countries can just say, no, you can't come in and have a look at a pandemic that's about to break out and actually affect the public health and the economy of the entire world, as we saw with this pandemic, then I think it's only sensible that that's an area of international cooperation that is very, very important, and I've been consistent on that. And remember, the Labor Party mocked me for saying that that was a good idea.
Well, the problem that I have with this is that this is an appointed globalist organization that doesn't really have any accountability otherwise, so I'm going to say no. The WHO should not have those powers or any powers or authorities. You represent your people. You do what's best for them. If you think that is shutting down your borders in an island country, then do that. If you think that is free trade and open everywhere, then do that. But you should not need the permission of a globalist organization that is, let's face it, run by motherfucking China. From the Blaze. Russian oil revenues up by 50% as Western sanctions on oil exports prove ineffective. Russian oil revenues have risen by 50% since the beginning of the year, despite Western nations attempting to isolate and weaken the Russian economy. Guess what? China's still buying that shit. The Epoch Times reported that the new report released by the International Energy Agency revealed that Russian Federation had earned about $20 billion each month of 2022. Russian oil producers sought roughly 8 million barrels of oil per day. Russian oil companies were able to achieve this feat largely because Western nations were unable to come to a consensus on isolating Russia's oil industry in response to Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. While the U.S. sanctioned Russian oil in early March, the European Union and its member states were unable to reach a unanimous agreement to ban the import of Russian oil by member nations. About 2/3 of the oil imported by EU member states comes from Russia, so the continued import of this oil, despite thorough sanctions on other sectors of the Russian economy, continues to provide Russia with a vital lifeline. Yeah, who could have seen that coming? The European bloc continues to be the largest consumer of Russian oil, despite the EU member nations presenting themselves as united in diplomatic and economic opposition to the Russian regime. Yeah, how's that working out for you? They account for roughly 43% of all Russian oil exported in April. Yeah, how's that going for you guys? $10 in oil prices give Russia $20 billion of current account inflows per year. With imports of collapsing, Russia's 2022 current account could exceed $200 billion. Good job. And they're still threatening to cut you off from it because you keep saying nasty shit about them and biting the hand that feeds you. Let's talk about Patricia Cullors. How much more can we get through? It is 9:14. BLM paid co-founder's baby daddy nearly 5 times more than Trayvon Martin Foundation. From Isabel Vincent. BLM paid the co-founder's baby daddy almost 5 times the amount the group doled out to the Trayvon Martin Foundation, a charity honoring black youth whose 2012 death spearheaded the movement. Patrice Cullors, the former executive director and co-founder of BLM, paid a company that owned by Damon Turner $969,459 US for live production, design, and media, according to the group's latest filings to the IRS. Turner's for-profit, which sells $145 sweatshirts on its website and solicits donations for the movement, received the second highest payout the group made in the fiscal year of 2020, which covers July 1st to June 30th. A rapper and artist, Turner is the father of Cullors' young son and runs an LA-based entertainment and clothing company called Trap Heels LLC. Turner's been on the receiving end of Cullors' largesse in the past. In 2019, his company took in $63,500 from Reform LA Jails, a state PAC controlled by Cullors to work in criminal justice reform. Meanwhile, the BLM GNF paid $200,000 to Florida-based Trayvon Martin Foundation. IRS filings show the nonprofit was set up by Trayvon's parents to provide emotional and financial support to families who had lost a child to gun violence, according to its website. Rage over the 17-year-old's shooting death and acquittal in the neighborhood watchman who claimed that he shot the teen in self-defense led to the birth of BLM and Patrice Cullors' fortune. There's another one of those, yeah. Who could have seen that coming? Who could have ever seen that coming? Throw a bunch of money at an organization that was put together quickly and hastily in a reactionary sense to capitalize on people's emotions. Who could have seen that coming? Especially with a name that you certainly cannot. You can't even deny this name, okay? You can't say a bad word about it because otherwise you think that black lives don't matter. Yeah, who could have seen that coming? Let's see. From the Daily Wire, nearly half of Biden's Twitter followers are fake, according to a report. From John Rigolizzo. Nearly half of President Biden's Twitter followers are fake accounts, according to a report. An audit of Biden's official POTUS Twitter account found that nearly 49.3% of the Twitter users who follow the account are fake followers. Newsweek initially reported on Tuesday to conduct the audit. Newsweek used a follower audit tool called Fake Followers, created by data analytics firm SparkToro. According to the Fake Followers tool, which is available for free online, the POTUS Twitter account has 10.9 million fake followers out of 22.2 million total, which makes up 49.3% of the account's followers. That number is relatively high for an account of that size. The median percentage of fake followers for an account of similar size is 41%, according to putting the POTUS account at the high end of the spectrum. That's right, 81 million votes, 10 scoops ice cream. The low end of the spectrum for an account of similar size is 25% fake followers. The tool defines fake followers as accounts that are unreachable and will not see the account's tweets, either because they're spam bots, propaganda, etc., or because they're no longer active on Twitter. To conduct the audit itself, the tool samples 2,000 random users picked from the 100,000 users who have followed the audit most recently. Who followed the audited account most recently. The tool then analyzes the followers using more than 25 factors that correlate with spam, bot, low-quality accounts. SparkToro notes that while none of these indicators alone points to a fake account, when multiple indicators are present, there's a strong correlation with low quality. According to the tool, 81% of the audited sample consisted of followers who had created accounts in the last 90 days. 93% had profile URLs that were not correct. 91% had a suspiciously small number of followers. 88% follow an unusually small number of accounts. 24% had a default profile picture. 45% had display names with spam-correlated signals, which meant first name and 17 numbers after it. And 72% had spam-correlated signals in their biographies. Biden's personal account had somewhat lower percentage of fake followers, according to the report. The audit tool found that @JoeBiden account had 43% fake followers, equal to about 14.7 million followers out of about 34 million total. Biden's account was much more towards the median percentage than POTUS. Still, some 55% sampled followers had not been active for more than 120 days. 60% had a suspiciously small number of followers. 47% followed an unusually small number of accounts, and 87% had suspicious profile URLs. 81 million votes, folks. 10 scoops ice cream. Yeah, I have a small followership. I only have what? What do I have now? 1,466? That's a relatively small one, I would say. What else do we have? We gotta get out of here soon. Let's do this one and let's call it. We'll do something I'm thankful for and head out for the day. Netflix cuts 150 jobs after subscriber slump. Revenue slow down. From Wendy Lee and Ryan Fonder. I gotta find an article for what I'm thankful for, so give me just a sec. Oh, am I not going to be able to find that now? That's lame. Oh, yeah, it's that one. Okay, so we'll talk about that in just a second. Netflix on Tuesday announced it was cutting 150 jobs amid a slowdown in revenue and a decline in subscribers that has shaken the entertainment industry and triggered a re-examination of the streaming business. The company did not say which departments would be affected by the cuts, though many of the job losses are in the U.S. As we explained on earnings, our slowing revenue growth means that we are also having to slow our cost growth as a company, a Netflix spokesperson said in a statement. So sadly, we're letting around 150 employees go today, mostly US-based. These changes are primarily driven by business needs rather than individual performance, which makes them especially tough, as none of them want to say goodbye to such great colleagues. We're working hard to support them, though this is a very difficult transition. Well, maybe if you had a revenue that was supportive of having that level of a workforce, you wouldn't have to go back and do that. The announcement comes after Netflix reported a loss of 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter for the first time in more than a decade. The Los Gatos-based streaming service expects to lose 2 million more subscribers this quarter. Following its earnings report, the company stock declined 35.1% to 226.19 on April 20th, the biggest one-day drop since 2004. Netflix is rethinking its business model, which long capitalized on providing a large library of content that was commercial-free for a premium price of $15.49 a month for a standard subscription. Netflix had been ramping up its staff during the pandemic as consumers joined the streaming service in droves as they sought ways to entertain themselves at home. As of December, Netflix had about 11,300 full-time employees. The cuts represent about 1% of its global workforce. A little less than half of the staff is based in Los Angeles. Departments affected by the layoffs include recruiting, communications, and the content side of business. More cuts could come to other teams later this year. The problem with Netflix is that they are not the market share anymore. They're not the market corner anymore. When I started streaming, when I started taking in streaming content, you had Netflix, you had Hulu, which Netflix was for all of your long-term, like your binge your series. They had a couple movies on there, but their big thing was getting all those seasons of series that you used to buy on DVD all in one place. And you had Hulu, which had some of the same stuff owned by different companies that didn't agree with Netflix. Plus, they had an opportunity to go back and catch current seasons of things after they were released. And then you had Amazon, which for the most part, there were usually a couple free movies here and there, but for the most part, you have to pay individually. Your Prime service was included with your Prime membership, but most premium content you had to buy still in a digital format. But now, not only do you have all these, their original programming sucked. Some of it does. Some of it's really good. I liked some of it, like Warrior Nun I liked, Umbrella Academy I liked. What was another really, really good one that I really liked on the platform? There were a bunch. And I'm glad that I got to see those. Apparently I'm supposed to go and watch Ozark too, but I mean with that, mostly it's woke stuff and Big Mouth and shit like that. Plus, Netflix used to have the corner on all the Disney Channel shows. I've mentioned that before. You'd go through and you'd see all the teen shows that were on Disney in the last generation were popping up on the Netflix. Those all went out to Disney Plus. Most of your sitcoms went to HBO Max or Paramount Plus. Or Hulu, in the case of Friends. How I Met Your Mother, that disappeared. That was on there when I started doing it. They're losing contracts. All the Treks are going. They're leaving Netflix. They're going to Paramount. I think Deep Space Nine is the only one that's still on there right now, and that contract is up later on in the year. Guess what? That's going to be a Paramount exclusive in a few months. They just don't have good content anymore. And now they want to buttress their earnings by throwing commercials in this too. I'm like, no. Now, I will say, I would be interested, especially when I was poor, living in Kenosha. I would have been interested at the time of having a possibly lower tier service that had commercials in it, because all I had at the time was cable, and cable fucking sucked. I would have been interested in having a lower tier service when I lived in Kenosha that had commercials on it. Instead of we'll use today's numbers, but it cost a lot less back then. Instead of the $15 a month, $7 a month plus commercials. I would have been interested in that at the time because they had good content at the time. Now that they don't have good content, they can take that commercial tier and shove it up their ass. So, it's not. It's not necessarily... there's a lot of things that are working against Netflix right now. And I think the big one for that with the subscriber drop is the fact that they are losing all that content. It's not necessarily that people don't have multiple streaming services or can't have multiple streaming services. It's the fact that the economy is dropping and they're looking and picking and choosing which streaming services that they want to have. Plain and simple. All right, let's finish out with something that restores my faith in humanity, something I'm thankful for. And I thought to myself, and I said, it couldn't be anything other than this. So we're going to go back and re-look at this article that we looked at yesterday towards the end of the show, because I wanted to touch on some of the reaction that I got to this. So I said at the end of the show I was going to go and share this with my mom because I thought it would be interesting to see what her take was on this. Again, living for most of the entirety of her life within the Democrat Party, saying that any vote for a Republican is a vote for evil. So I sent this article to my mom, and she texted me back later on and said, I thought that a parent's job was to teach the children to think for themselves. And that, that really got me to thinking about the house that I grew up in and the situation that I grew up in. Yes, I am in a situation where I should be absolutely blue-haired, still wearing the earrings. My ear is pierced, by the way, but still wearing the earrings. I do have long hair. I'll give it to that, but that's going for charity. But I'm in the situation, given the house that demographically, I should say, the house that I grew up in, that I should be a raging liberal. But I was taught, above ideology, to make a thought for oneself. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to be brought up into such a situation, because there are a lot of people out there who weren't. And just seeing this, by the way, now the mother with a child who's 17, the mom in this situation is probably the same age as me. I would have to guess. And if she is not the same age as me, she's probably just a touch older. Not much older, though. Which means she was brought up at the same time, and probably a similar kind of household, but brought up in a way. Now, the mom is anonymous in this, so I have no idea how old she actually is, but she's probably right around the same age as me. Brought up in a household probably similar to mine. Union Democrats, maybe closer to the inner city. I think that might have been a part of it, is growing up out in the country somewhere, but similar situation, only Democrat. You've been told that the Republicans are the bad guy your entire life. Plus, you've got the school system out there as well, who's driving this into the minds of these young children. This parent who says that she needs to know if she can cut off her daughter for going to a pro-life event or even being pro-life. That is not a situation that I've ever been in. And there have been spars with my parents, especially over the Trump presidency, over whether or not he was doing anything good, because up till I started doing this, they'd only ever seen things from the mainstream side. They had never seen somebody other than a mainstreamer giving them information. Somebody in a suit that costs more than your house. That's part of my goal with Turn Some Pages, is to give you news from people who are just like you. But moreover, my faith in humanity is restored, that there are those of us out here who can be fed the Democrat line for our entire lives and still be able to look back, analyze, and think for ourselves and say, shit, dude, this ain't right. This ain't right. And we got to go do something different here, because otherwise we're going to be in a real tough spot. Now, I also have to agree with the fact that being where I was in the middle of the downturn with no help for me, like if I do fear that if I would have been able to get some government help when I was at my lowest point, it might have changed and colored my opinion. And I do think that the fact that there was no government help for me because, I don't know, probably because of the color of my skin, tells me that that may have shaped my views in and of itself. But regardless, this is where I stood. I'm thankful for the house that I grew up in. I'm thankful for the people who were also able to grow up in the same house, the same kind of household. My sister is another great example, because she pulled the party line for much longer than I did. I was already starting to have questions during the Obama years. My sister pulled the party line still, but even still was able to look past this and say, dude, there's something that ain't right about here. Something's not right in this situation. So, I'm thankful for that. I'm happy for that. We are going to head out of here for the day, though, so thank you for that. And we will, well, we'll sell the wares as we go. Gotta change my music, which means I gotta put my Discord away. Oh, the train is coming. Here, that'll be my outro music. I'll sing Johnny Cash for you. I hear the train a-comin'. It's rolling round the bend. And I ain't seen the sunshine since... God, I can't sing in that key. I'm usually up here somewhere more. And I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. Alright, let's get out of here. Where's my classic Stephen Ignoramus outro music? Alright, so thanks everybody who came by, chatted, hung out in the live chat, kept me on point, kept me honest. The mods who came in and exercised their discretion. There again, remember, if you're a mod, you don't have to ask my permission for anything. If you don't like the situation, you have a wrench, or a sword, or an axe, because I trust your judgment, and given the fact that I don't read the live chat during the show, and only read it back after the fact, I put you in that position so you can act on your own autonomously without asking my permission. So if that's how you feel comfortable, let me know and we'll figure that out as we go. But thanks everybody who came by and listened, told a friend. We got up to 16 I saw on the counter at one point today, so we're 4 away from the 20 that we're looking to get to for the goals. And then we'll move the goal up to 25, but we got 4 away from it today. Tell some more friends, get some more people in here. Let's get some more going on with that. We will be back here tomorrow, bright and early, for more news. I'm sure there's going to be more news about the Buffalo shooting, because that's the latest panic attack. We'll have to talk a little bit more about Somalia, what's going on with that. We've got these last few articles that we didn't get to here today. Sanctuary city for abortion, pizza delivery has a problem, mandates forcing religious employers to pay. I've been trying to get to that for a week. And Secret Gender Club, so we'll be talking about that tomorrow. Definitely looking forward to that and catching up with some of that. Plus, whatever news happens in the next 22 hours. Definitely looking forward to that. I gotta head out of here for the day. Stick around if you're over on the Twitch side. We are going raiding, and other than that, we will see you next time. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.